Hey guys, Polsky here, back with another video. So today's video is going to be talking all about stretching and how to improve your flexibility and how to stretch more effectively and safely. So let's get right into it. So you say you want to do stretching, but it's really important that you have a goal in mind. So you really want to know your why. And so a good way to do it, I find, is to have a functional goal in mind. So maybe you just want to be able to bend over and touch your toes. Maybe you want to be able to tie your shoelaces without getting back pain. Maybe you want to lengthen your running stride. Maybe you just want to improve your posture. But it's really good to have a functional goal in mind before you start stretching. That way you kind of know what you're working towards. You have a reason for why you're sort of doing all this. And then the next thing you want to do is just sort of develop for yourself a little kind of stretching program that is going to help get you to meet those goals. So it's really important, firstly, to know why we're stretching. And that's sort of going to lead into the next part of it. So the what. So what are you actually going to stretch? So you need to know which muscles you want to stretch to improve your flexibility. Now, sometimes it's sort of obvious, like, okay, so I know I want to be able to bend down and touch my toes comfortably. So that's sort of going to involve hamstrings. You need to lengthen your hamstrings, and there's a lot of stretches you can go and look up on YouTube, whatever, for hamstrings. But then sometimes, you have a more complex, flexibility goal. So maybe I had a client, the other day who said, I can't, sit on the floor with my legs crossed, and ultimately I'd like to be able to go to a yoga class and sit in the lotus position comfortably, without any pulling, without any pain, and to be able to relax into that position. So there's a great functional goal, but that involves a different number of muscles. So there's more muscles involved in getting into that movement comfortably and safely, and you may not necessarily know which muscles you need to stretch to be able to meet that goal. So this is a really good time when it's time to talk to a professional. If it's more than just a basic flexibility goal, go and see a professional, go see a physio, an osteo, maybe a chiro, or like myself, someone who is a trained body worker in remedial massage. That's what I do. Go and see a professional who's going to be able to do a proper assessment, posture assessment, gait assessment. It's going to be able to look at your body, take you through range of motion, maybe do some orthopedic tests and work out exactly what your flexibility limitations are and how best to improve those. Otherwise, you're kind of just trying to stumble along in the dark a bit by yourself, and one, that might not be the safest way to do it. You might end up, doing something that's going to cause an injury. And two, it's not very efficient. So you just might not be stretching the right muscles and spend a whole lot of time, invest a whole lot of time into flexibility and not really meet your goal, which can be quite frustrating. It's really just a waste of your time at the end of the day. So really encourage you to go and speak to a professional who works on people's bodies and is going to give you some sort of, really concise, precise insight into how you can go and achieve your goals. That being said, once you have a program, and you have a program of and maybe set from a professional of what muscles you need to improve the flexibility of, you have a program and you start implementing the program, you need to have a way to sort of measure your progress. So there's different ways to measure flexibility progress, but as you go throughout your flexibility session, you want to take note of, for each muscle group, when at the start, before I actually started stretching, how much range did I have in that joint? So, before you start, bend down, touch your toes, how far could I get? Could I get to the floor? Could I only get, one hand away from the floor, my fingertips grazing the floor? Take note of the starting position. Now, the next thing you want to take note of is, once you finish stretching that muscle, the finishing position. How much flexibility did you gain over that session? So if you're not actually gaining some flexibility in that muscle group over the course of the session, something's not quite right, and you need to look at why that is. You should gain flexibility by the end of the session. You should increase your range. And that doesn't mean you're going to keep all that range going forward, but you need to have already increased the range within one session. And that's sort of an indicator that you're progressing in the right direction. The next thing you want to take note of is how long did it take me to increase that range within the session. So maybe you could get that flexibility gain within 30 seconds. Maybe it took you 10 minutes to get any kind of, release of the muscles and a bit of a flexibility gain. That's another measurement that you want to take note of, because a lot of stretching, flexibility is actually about, it's about your muscular system, but it's also about your central nervous system and its ability to relax as a whole, but also to relax the specific muscles you're working with. And the more you practice stretching and flexibility work and body work, the more you work with breath, the more you're working on things like this, the more efficient you'll become at becoming more flexible and more relaxed overall, as well as more flexible and more relaxed in the specific muscles you're concerned with. So you're sort of hitting it from both perspectives. Okay. The other thing you want to note, so once you kind of have a program, or you know what muscles you want to stretch, you've been through that maybe with a professional, and you know sort of what you want to do, the order of your stretches really matters. So, it's beyond the scope of one video to explain it all, but essentially I'll give a quick example. So let's say, you have really tight biceps. So then, you might start your session, you do some bicep stretches, and you feel like you've got some really good length through those biceps. But then you also, as part of your flexibility goals, you've realized that your quads are tight too. And then you go and do a quad stretch, and you're like holding this quad stretch, and you're pulling on your biceps while you're doing that quad stretch. So you've just lengthened this, and then you've done another stretch that's going to place more tension on that muscle group after you've lengthened it, and you're sort of negating some of your gains. So you need to think you need to consider carefully the order you're doing your stretches in. So the ones that you want the most flexibility in, or the ones that are probably the hardest, you want to start to do towards the end. So there's no other tension coming in at the end being placed on those muscles that's going to kind of negate any gains that you've got in the stretching session. So the order that you stretch your muscles in is also really important. Beyond the scope of one video to talk about how that might work, but this is another good reason to go and see a professional. They'll give you a stretching program, and they should be considering the order the stretches go in and flow in, because it does make a big difference to your progress. Okay, so we've covered the why, the what, now the when. The when you stretch is very, very important. So generally speaking, you don't want to stretch before, vigorous activity or hard workouts. You want to save your stretching for the end. There's exceptions to this, and you can do some light stretches at the beginning of a workout, especially if you're at tight. But when you're going for flexibility, if that's your goal you have in mind to really increase your flexibility, you want to do that after a workout, because you'll be warm. And being warm is super, super important to increasing your flexibility. You never want to start your flexibility program day or session with cold muscles. You must be warmed up. So whether that's a hot shower, excuse me, whether that's an infrared sauna, whether that's you go for a jog or it's after your workout, your muscles need to be warm, and they need to stay warm throughout the session. So once you're warmed up, put a tracksuit on. Sometimes in winter, I'm stretching in my thermals because it gets quite cold where I am. So you need to keep the muscles warm before, during, and after your stretching session. So heat is critical to not only progressing efficiently in increasing flexibility, it's also important as far as safety goes, because cold muscles have more of a tendency to get injured. If they're nice and warm, there's a lot less likelihood that you're going to be injured. Also speaking about the when, you need to consider when your stretching session is in relation to the other activities you're doing throughout the day. So I've heard some people, they like to get up in the morning and do a stretching session, and that, maybe that's a great part of your routine. It's a great way to sort of start the day, get into your body. Okay, awesome, no problems with it. But let's say you're going to go get up in the morning, do some stretching, and then you go to the gym, or then you go sit in your car, or then you go sit at the desk for 8 hours. So you've done all this great work, and maybe you've lengthened out your hip flexors or whatever you're working on. So you know, let's say you work, you've stretched your hip flexors out, and then you go sit in a car. So you've just lengthened them out, and then you're doing exactly the opposite. You're folding into that 90-90 position, and your hip flexors are straight away, you've negated a lot of the gains you've gotten. So you want to consider when you're stretching throughout the day. So don't do a stretching session and then immediately after, go and sit for a long period, or go and do a heavy workout, or anything that's going to place a lot of tension on those muscles you've just stretched. You're kind of negating the benefit of all the stretching you're doing. So a really good time to stretch is right before bed. So let's say you've done your working day, 9 to 5, you go do a workout at the gym, you're nice and warm, and then you have a light meal, maybe a hot shower, do a stretching session, and then you go to bed. So all that flexibility that you've just increased over the session, improved, is just going to hold while you're sleeping, and all the muscles get a chance to really just stretch out and stay relaxed. That's going to be a lot more effective for your stretching. So really consider not only, what you're stretching, but when you're stretching it. That's really important. Okay, so we kind of talked about why, what, when. So I'm going to sort of talk a little bit about the how. Now there's a lot of ins and outs to stretching. I've got a lot more videos on stretching, but let's just talk about, generally speaking, what you should be thinking about. So you want to be doing stretches that you can hold for quite a long time, comfortably, without creating too much tension in other areas of your body. So if you're doing a stretch that really requires you to pretzel up and getting a good stretch in your quads, but you really need to put a lot of tension in other body parts, you might be relaxing your quads, but you're getting a lot of tension in other body parts. So that's not good for other body parts. And also, the body functions as a whole. The more you can relax the whole body, the more the whole body relaxes. So that sounds obvious, I'll say it again. The more you can relax the whole body, the more the whole body relaxes. So that means if you can do stretches that are in open positions that take advantage of gravity, that take advantage of using walls or using props, using leverage, rather than exerting a lot of effort with other body parts, and allow the majority of your body, if not all of your body, to relax, those are the stretches you want to go with. So, a good example would be, rather than doing a hamstring stretch where I have to bend down and touch my toes and might cramp up my lower back, and I can't necessarily hold that for a long time, do a floor stretch or do a wall stretch so you can hold that position for a long time, really relax your lower back, breathe, relax everything, but you're still getting that hamstring stretch. So, and there's going to be plenty more videos on this channel about specific stretches you can do, but generally you want to be taking advantage of gravity, you want to be taking advantage of leverage, you want to be taking advantage of props. That includes like walls, trigger point balls, medicine balls, anything like that, bands, resistance bands. Props can be really good to provide resistance instead of you providing it. You want to take advantage of that. But overall, what we're talking about is the more the whole body can relax while you're stretching, the more effective and efficient and safe your stretching is going to be.